So before we finish, I just had to talk about Joshua Buatsi because I've just been made aware that Joshua Buatsi is going to be fighting Zach Parker. At this point of time, I don't have too much knowledge about Zach Parker, but I just want to briefly talk about Joshua Buatsi, and I'll elaborate more on this match as it gets closer. So I think with Joshua Buatsi, there's a few things to establish. Why did he lose to Callum Smith? That was his last fight. What he did well. How do you beat Joshua Buatsi? And what improvements can he make? So let's answer some of that. So why did he lose to Callum Smith? To simply put, Callum Smith is a good fighter. And if you want a reference point to Callum Smith, there are many reference points to Callum Smith, but his fight against George Groves, he really fought at an elite level that night. He would have beaten a lot of people that night. And I do believe that George Groves may have gone into that fight injured or was not 100%, but still, it was a sensational performance. He measured the situation with his jab, and his left hook counter was absolutely brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant, absolutely on point. So he lost to a fighter of high pedigree. Also, Callum Smith was setting loads of traps. He had loads of punch creativity that night, and he was just going through the gears. And I think in making that fight, even though they would have known that potentially it could have been a difficult fight, one of the assertions you could have made from Callum Smith's last fight against Bivol was that he's lost his punch resistance. And that simply wasn't true in their fight. So he just seemed to go to another level in that fight. Interestingly, he was trained by Buddy McGirt, and he did a lot of tricks in that fight. And I think that fight was a good reference point to indicate how good a trainer Buddy McGirt can be. So what did he do well? What did Joshua Buatsi do well? Because even though he lost, he did do some things well. I believe he doubled up his left hook a lot in that fight, and he had some good body and head shots. So I think he used the left hook well. At times, he would be explosive. Now, this is something that Evander Holyfield used to do in the prime of his career, where, say, for example, when he fought George Foreman in round 7, he just literally burst into action and just unleashed like 23 punches. Joshua Buatsi also does this. He might go into a lull. He lulls you into a false sense of security, and then he'll just jump into action. And this is like an old pro's trick. And he has Virgil Hunter as his trainer. And Virgil Hunter is a very experienced, high-caliber trainer, trained Andrew Ward throughout his whole career. I think that speaks for itself. I think that in itself speaks volumes. So he was explosive, and he showed great commitment as well, because there were times when the thing is with Callum Smith, not only does he hit you with the left hook to the body, it's the way he sets it up. So he would do a short left hook to the head and then whip in hard that left hook to the body. And, and he alternates it as well, because he might double up the left and then do the left and then whip it back to the body. So it's hard to calculate when he's going to punch you to the body because of his punch creativity, or what some might say his difference in punch variations. So because of this, it was hard to read Callum Smith's rhythm, and he was setting up different traps as well. But he had to show commitment because he got hit with a lot of left hooks to the body, and he got hit with some hefty right hands, I believe, as well, to the head. So he showed commitment to stay in there, because that fight, I think, told us a lot about Joshua Buatsi as a fighter. He's a fighter. He's courageous. When he's when he gets into a war, he's not going to give up. He's going to stay there. And that's what he did. And he kept composed. I like his composure. And I noticed when he fought Craig Richards and in his other fights, one of the significant factors that I liked about Joshua Buatsi is that he always stayed composed. He waited for his opportunity, and then he would seize the moment. And he did that in that fight against Callum Smith. So in a sense, it wasn't that Joshua Buatsi was bad in that fight. It was that Callum Smith was very, very good. So how do you beat Joshua Buatsi? Well, a great jab to nullify his work on the inside. You have to be able to nullify his explosive moments, and you have to keep him away. Joshua Buatsi does very well when he's on your chest. So you want to keep him off your chest, you want to utilize your jab, and you want to utilize some effective combinations, maybe start with the head and then go down to the body to try and reduce his ability to come back into the fight, because he's very well conditioned. So if you haven't made that investment to the body, then he's definitely going to come on very strong in the late rounds. But Joshua Buatsi is a very good fighter. I think there's not many weaknesses there. It's just that Cam Smith is a former champion and he had a very good night. So with that being said, I guess the next question is, what improvements can Buatsi make? I feel like he needs to develop some counters with that left hook to the body. He really needs to work on how to deal with fighters that can have that variation. That's a really tough thing to do, but it's really essential. He has that explosiveness, so he needs to maintain that, maintain setting those traps. I think I would like to see more consistency in his jab. And I'd like to see that jab not just to the head, but also to the body. And, you know, just working more on the feints and setting up the feints for the left hooks or for the overhand rights, which is kind of what he does. But you just want to see more proficiency, I think, with the jab, and maybe more jabs to the chest as well. I think that could be an effective weapon for Joshua Buatsi. I like it when he gets on the inside, he steps to the right to create that angle for the left hook. I think he needs to do that. I think he needs to maintain that. I think Joshua Buatsi has good punch creativity, so it's about maintaining that, also add to it, but he already has a great palette of different ranges of punches. But I think it's, when a fighter loses, it's important. He lost that fight, but he came into that fight very confident and very committed. And sometimes it's not just about improving it's not just about improving a performance. It's about coming into a fight with the same level of commitment that you had before. Because it's quite easy to just go on like a downward spiral. So hopefully his team can keep him motivated, can keep him, because I think with Joshua Buatsi, it's more going to be a mental battle. It's about sustaining a certain level and then accelerating and, you know, getting his confidence back, because, and to be honest, he has a lot to be confident. You know, he fought a former world champion who had a great night and he had a competitive fight. Another thing that Joshua Buatsi could work on, and this is something that Don Turner, one of Evander Holyfield's teachers, or one of his trainers, taught, is a concept called the drill. And what the drill is, what you do, you begin the round fast. So you might start the round with a flurry. Let's say you start the round with like 10 punches. And then you end the round in the last half minute, typically with a flurry of punches. And what that does psychologically, that gives the impression that you may have done more than you actually did, because the first interaction and the last interaction in the round is the first and last thing that a judge sees. So maybe the implementation of the drill might be a good strategic approach for Buatsi. But definitely more jabs. He needs to work on that jab. And he has a good jab, but he can just work on the output of the jab. I'm actually interested to see what happens with Joshua Buatsi. And I think the Anthony Yarde fight, if that ever comes off, that would be a brilliant fight. I think those styles could clash really well. And assuming that they both keep winning, that fight could have, it could be a nice payday for both of them, which would be good because you feel that's a type of fight that they're both going to leave a lot in the ring. And it's important to realize that Anthony Yarde has a good pedigree. He's fought Sergey Kovalev, when he was a champion, and he fought Bivol, and he was competitive against Bivol. So it will be very fascinating to see how Joshua Buatsi performs in this fight and how his career moves forward.